Channel 5 Network. This is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. I am Nick Barris. This is live. It is, what is today? I mean, you know, you get back from vacation, you get mixed up on how everything's going, but today is Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and it is going to be a good day because we're going to open up the phone lines and your chance to get some free legal advice this morning as we're going to be talking Ask an Attorney. And there's a lot of attorneys in town you can talk to, but there's only one attorney right now. You can call in and ask legal questions of on MorningLine live for free, and that's right now, and that is Andy Allman.
Hey.
And let me just say, that is a deal, because this guy's a very good attorney, and it's good of him to come on with us this morning. And it's nice to see you. How you been?
Been doing well.
It's been a few weeks, you know. Andy comes on every few weeks, and open up the phone line 737-7587. I mean, there's a lot of you know, stories in the news making headlines. I always try to remind the viewers that when we have you on, I want them to take this as an opportunity to ask questions about legal questions that maybe affect them. And hopefully you're not facing a double homicide. I mean, we talk to lawyers a lot of times on some of these big criminal cases. This show is more about oftentimes civil type issues. And as always, Andy, go ahead and lay out for folks again your specialty. And I can say it, I've heard it many of time, employment law, discrimination, but go ahead.
Yeah, we do employment and labor law and some civil rights work.
Okay.
And we represent employees. We represent employees who feel like they've been wrongfully terminated. They may have been discriminated against in the workplace because of their age or a disability. Maybe they have had to take some medical leave and been fired because of that, fired because they have been injured on the job or filed a workers' compensation claim. They maybe feel like they've been treated unfavorably because of their race or their gender, national origin, religion, things along those lines.
It's very interesting. How does that relate now to, we saw that Metro this past week is looking at same-sex marriages and equal benefits for same-sex couples as, you know, married couples that are heterosexual and all of that. Are there cases that are coming on where you see, you know, homosexual, gay, lesbian employees that feel they've been discriminated suing now as well?
Well, we're not seeing it as much as we see the other areas.
Okay, right. I didn't know if it's, is that evolving, do you think?
It is, and it has started with the federal government that passed some federal laws that gave those individuals the same types of protections that we give older workers, that we give workers who have a disability or have to take medical leave. So the law is evolving, and it's evolving to protect those individuals the same way that we protect every other employee in the workplace.
Yeah, and that's basically what it comes down to. And just so we can clarify, one thing I learned from you that I've never forgotten, and I had seen recently another case where someone was trying to sue, it was a well-known local store, and an individual had slipped and fallen in the store and injured themselves. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, if I slip and fall in one of these big department stores and hurt myself, I'm going to sue them, I'm going to own the place. And I remember you said, Nick, that accidents happen.
Right.
Things happen. Little children walk down the aisle and accidentally spill a Coke and don't tell anyone, and someone else comes around the corner and slips and falls. I don't see how that is the fault of the department store. Now, you said, Nick, if something is wrong where there's like perhaps a deviation in a floorboard that's clearly a danger, and it's been reported and documented and reported for several times, and there's records of that, and they never fix it and someone falls. That's a different ballgame. Talk about that, just so, because I hear a lot of people always say, well, I slipped and fell in Walmart, and, you know, that's not fair. And I'm like, wait a second, it's not fair to say, without knowing all the facts, that that's Walmart's fault or any other department store.
And that comes down to what we call notice.
Okay.
And what you've got to prove is that in that particular instance, the store was on notice that there was a condition that existed that could cause that type of injury. So, you know, in the example that you first gave, that there was liquid, you know, on the floor. You know, if a child is walking down an aisle and spills liquid on the floor and the person behind them slips, it's awfully hard to show that the store had notice of the condition.
Right.
Now, if you're in the freezer section and the freezer's been leaking for 4 and 5 days out into the floor,
right,
and nobody's done anything to fix that situation, then there's notice to the store, and it's foreseeable that if you don't fix that condition, someone's going to get hurt.
I wonder if this comes from, where people have this belief that, well, if I fail, is there any truth to the case, be it your own private property or perhaps a private business owner, where if someone just gets hurt on your property, regardless of how somehow you were liable for it? Because I've heard people say, well, what if some kid comes into my backyard when I'm not home and gets on the swing set and falls and breaks his leg? Am I going to get sued for that? And a lot of people worry about things like that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem fair. If you're gone and some kid on his own walks into your backyard and it's just a swing set, it's not something dangerous, he swings when he shouldn't be and he falls and breaks his leg, how on earth, just because it happens on your property, would you be liable for that?
Well, in most instances, you would not. But now remember, what we also have in Tennessee is something called comparative fault. And so if you're going to point the finger at someone and claim that they were negligent and that their negligence caused the injury to your child on the swing set, the law is also going to look at you as a parent and say, why weren't you supervising your child? Why weren't you monitoring your child? How did you not know where your child was when your child left your property? And the law is going to allow a jury to compare the fault. And we start out with there's 100% of fault that's out there, and we're going to start attributing a percentage of the fault that caused the injury to the players involved, the property owner, the child, if the child is of a certain age, and then the parent of the child. And that reduces, a lot of times, any liability, sometimes to zero, of the property owner.
The difference would be, too, if you have something very, very dangerous, unusual, and it's just left out in the open in your backyard, and the child did wander into the backyard, all that stuff will still be considered that you just said. But let's just say I left in the backyard a loaded, operational, ready-to-fire flamethrower, or something like that, and something that should not be there. And a child wanders in the backyard and wonders, what's this? And it's a very dangerous thing. Or perhaps even I have a swimming pool in the back, and it's not properly gated. But it is on my property, and a child wanders in and falls into the pool, God forbid. Does that take into account how dangerous, as opposed to a swing set, or if I left a loaded gun on the back porch?
Okay, and you're talking, two opposite ends of the spectrum. And when you start talking about leaving a loaded weapon, out, that's clearly going to increase the liability and the exposure of the property owner. But when you start talking about a swimming pool, that's why we have codes, and codes tells us that if you're going to put a swimming pool in, you've got to have a certain type of fencing around that swimming pool that prevents children from entering that area and getting into the pool. That's why you have the gates on all the fences around swimming pools in residential areas have a particular type of opener, and it's a child-proof opener.
And they automatically tend to close on a spring when you walk through. You don't have to close it yourself.
That's correct, and codes won't give you a final permit until you've got that type of fencing.
And then my take then is, if you abide by the code's rules and you have it all in place, and some kid jumps over the fence when you're not home and drowns, that's not your fault at all. That's his or his parents.
Could be.
I just don't see how, as long as you've followed codes. But that comes up, and those are certain types of cases there. I don't know, I was just interested in that. I always learn from Andy. Listen, the number 737-7587, calls coming in, and I want to say this too, while he specializes, and really what he does is, he just said, the employment discrimination, a lot of it's in federal court. Andy has a very good general legal background, and we can try to answer other legal questions for you. Now, when it gets into estate planning and divorce and all that,
that's going to be pretty tough for me.
If it's not in his ballpark, we'll tell you. But some of the very general legal questions we can take as well. So let's start things off with Marie. Marie, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind, Marie?
I have a friend that worked for a detention center here in Nashville, and he was assaulted at work, but he was under doctor's care at the time that they fired him.
Yeah.
Although he got severely assaulted, and he was under doctor's care, and within a month, the state let him go, even though he was under the doctor's care, with basically no good reasoning. And he finally went and filed for workman's comp, which he fought and did win and got. And now he went through several, he went through a surgery and just a lot of things. And now he's waiting on his settlement basically from workman's comp. But my question is, can he file a discrimination suit with the state, even though this is an at-will, I think they said an at-will state as far as firing someone, they don't have to give you a reason here in the state of Tennessee? Is that correct? I mean, he had major surgery, and he's just waiting on a motion settlement part of how much he's capable to use his body.
Okay.
And that's basically my question. And this happened in 2012. So is there like a statute
of limitations? All right. Let's see if, ballpark.
All she's telling me is that this individual was hurt on the job, filed a workers' compensation claim, and then was terminated. And the answer is yes. Tennessee recognizes a lawsuit or cause of action by an employee if that employee is fired because they had an on-the-job injury and made a workers' compensation claim against the employer. Now, that varies when you begin talking about a public employer, say the state of Tennessee, and there is some case law out there that can prevent an employee from suing the state for retaliation for filing a workers' compensation claim. There was a case several years ago out of Wilson County, against the Wilson County 911 department, where the appellate divisions held that the state can't be sued for retaliation for filing a workers' compensation claim, because remember, you can only sue the state of Tennessee if the state gives you permission to sue it. And then the state passes laws and through the legislature that says this is when you can sue the state of Tennessee. Now, if we're talking about a private employer, it's a 1-year statute of limitations. If your employer fires you because you have made that workers' compensation claim, you've got 1 year to file your case. The second issue that she raised is saying, well, Tennessee is an employment at will state, and they can fire you for any reason. An employer can fire you for any reason they choose. Employment at will is a phrase that has been tossed around.
That and right to work is the other one.
By special interest groups, in my opinion, to really inhibit, if you will, or discourage employees from pursuing their rights. What we say in Tennessee is an employer can fire an employee for any reason they choose, so long as it's not an illegal reason. And both the federal legislature and the state legislature gives us a very long list of reasons that are illegal reasons for an employer to terminate an employee, and gives the employee a cause of action, a right to bring suit against that employer.
Very interesting. Listen, on that note, we'll take a break. When we come back, we've got more calls coming in. Again, the number 737-7587 is the number. Andy Allman's our legal expert this morning. Of course, employment law, that's his expertise. This guy's the best at that. But we can also take some general questions from you about the law. He's very good with that as well. Dela, Neva, others, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to you. And we do have some lines open, so we'll continue up till 9 right after this.